Hi guys, welcome back to episode 3 of Two Girls, One Crime. I'm Emily, this is Megan, and today's
Hello.
topic is all about the Zodiac Killer, which was actually requested by one of our viewers. So, yay!
Yeah, this is great, and there's so much to this one. So this was really fun for us to look
100%.
at.
Yeah. So, I'm going to kind of talk about the background, and then Megan will go into the actual crime itself. And, like usual, we'll talk about some theories or frequently asked questions. So, a little background. Since this is an unsolved case, or like we don't know who the serial killer is, it was kind of hard to do a background just because we don't know who the person is. But so
Hmm.
this is a little bit of just like a tidbit about the Zodiac killer. So, like we said, the Zodiac killer is an unidentified serial killer in the Bay Area, so like San Francisco, Lake Berryessa, all of that in California. He murdered 5 people and injured 2 others between December of 1968 and October of 1969. Like we said, this is a super famous case just because it's still unsolved today. The Zodiac Killer became well known and famous for taunting the police and sending these cryptic letters and messages to the police and the news and the media, and he actually gave himself the name of Zodiac. So, in these letters, he claimed that he killed 37 people, which they kind of thought that that was probably like an ego boost for himself. And we'll get into it later, but he attacked young couples in parking lots or like secluded areas with like a pistol or a knife. Again, since we don't know who the Zodiac Killer is, it's kind of hard to give a full background. So this was a little summary, but Megan is going to talk about the crime itself. So let's get into
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So there are so many different parts of this, and I could probably talk about it for like 10 million years. So like Em
That would be a long
said,
podcast.
yeah, that would be a very long podcast. So like Em said, there are 5 people that were confirmed killed, or 5 people that were like confirmed to be involved with the Zodiac killings. I believe 3 of which were actually murdered, and 2 was attempted murders. And again, like Emily said, this individual, male, female, we have no clue, terrorized the Northern California area for years and would send these like 3-part coded messages explaining his motives, who he killed, and it wouldn't even be like motive. It would just kind of be like it needed to be done and things like that. Um, and to this day, there has been, with all these crypto notes, there has been thousands of crypto analysts involved. There has been behavioral analysts involved, fingerprints, FBI, all of these different things, and no one has been able to solve it or understand like who it is, who it could be, or just like why they were doing it in the way they were. One thing I did want to touch on, which I found really interesting, was the FBI at the time of all this never opened up an investigation. It later was kind of investigated, and this came directly from the FBI website where they talked about how the local law enforcement contacted the FBI to kind of get some support. They wanted crypto analysts, I believe they're called, code breakers, and they never opened an actual investigation. And then now it's kind of just like this investigation they're involved in, and it is open, but at the time there was no FBI involvement, which I think is like insane.
Yeah.
Um,
It is,
especially
especially
when,
for how big of a case it is,
right?
and it was then. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it I mean, think about all the different like cases out there that have FBI involvement that are like, oh, one person did this one crime. This was multiple crimes. Possibly, you said 37, correct?
yeah, that's what he
Yeah.
claimed in the
Yeah,
letters.
literally 37 people who possibly could have been murdered that just never were investigated by the FBI. But what kind of went into it was on July 1969, a letter arrived to the San Francisco Examiner paper, stated that they were going to be known as the soon-to-be notorious Zodiac serial killer. And they said in a message, "I like killing people because it's so fun." And then that just continued into later down the line of 2 attempted murders, 5 murders, hinting of killing at least 27. And a lot of things with this has inspired like dozens of books, TV shows, and movies. Obviously, I didn't put all the names, but I put some in particular that really stood out. So on June 4th of 1963, Sherry Bates was going to the library and told her dad she was going to leave. And later, her Volkswagen Beetle was found abandoned in the library parking lot, and her body was laying a couple of miles away, stabbed multiple times. And then we get a letter in the mail saying Miss Bates was stupid. She was to be slaughtered like a lamb. And also added on there, "I'm not sick, I'm insane." Later, a couple of years later, actually, in April 1967, said Bates had to die, there will be more, and then ended it with Z. And every single note he left, every cryptic message, he left it with like Zodiac or Z. Continued on December 20th, 1968, 5 nights before Christmas, Betty Jensen and David Faraday were going on a first date, Lover's Lane type area of California, and they were discovered by a motorcyclist. Betty Lou had 5 bullet wounds in her back, while David had one in his head, and he was still breathing, but he nearly died, and there was no one that they saw, that he was not able to identify anybody. No letter came in the mail, I believe, from that one, but there was some connection there. And finally, the last 2 I just want to touch on. July 4th of 1969, Darlene Ferrin was also murdered, and the Zodiac killer sent in a message that, "I want to report a murder." If you go and called, I think is insane. They called 911. Said, "I want to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." So that was also insane. And in that particular scenario, there was also one individual who I did not put down in particular, but there was another killing, one of which survived in his name, and if I butcher this, I apologize. It's Mike Mageau, who actually was shot and survived, later identified a killer or someone who he believes shot him, but we'll get into that. But anyways, how this ended, and then I'll be done word vomiting, was they get this letter on January 29th, 1974, alluding to a possible suicide, and also saying like a box score where it said me 37 SFPD San Francisco Police Department 0. February 14th, 1974, there was another one that just said a friend, and then the last one was on May 8th, 1974, there was one more letter that said a citizen, in quotes, complained about glorification of violence. And ever since then, there was nothing else that ever came of it. No one ever figured out anything else, and it just kind of has been left a mystery to this day.
I find it so weird that, like, this person, which we know it is a man because, one person did see his face, I guess, and did a drawing for the police, or the police did a drawing to show it, but nobody can, like, identify it. So I think it's so interesting how he, like, is sending all these letters to the newspaper, the media, the police, like, giving all of these details, things that could give him up, and, like, but still, like, staying hidden. Like, I feel like he wants this, like, validation and being like, I did this, but, like, why wouldn't he go and be like, it's me? Like, I just find it so interesting.
Yeah, and also he called them, or whoever it was, called the police and was like, here's this murder, and then I also killed these people last year, and hung up the phone.
Yeah.
There's no ability to trace it. There was no one, like you said, who came in and was like, oh, this is what I did. It just was like, okay, like they did this and we can't figure out who it is.
Yeah, and like no voice recognition, no like facial recognition, I guess, from the drawing to the like the police sketch to people being like in a lineup or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's so wild.
Yeah, and it's like, again, this was in the believe late 60s, early 70s, so there wasn't a lot of that. Very similar to when we talked about like the Jeffrey Dahmer case and even the John Benet Ramsey. They all happened in the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where there wasn't this technology to really talk to support in that investigation. But even so, like looking at fingerprints, there were no fingerprints ever connected to any of the killings. There were no like other mugshots, crime records, anything.
I don't think any like murder weapons were found either.
No,
I don't think.
No, as far as I'm aware, they always knew what the murder weapon was, where it was like, oh, it's a gun, or like the bullet casings were attached to a gun, but they never knew like what in particular, so they could fingerprint that as well. I believe the killer always walked away with the weapon.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's, I guess like a few like, I guess we could go into a few theories if we wanted to, or just some like more information about it. I think it is so, like we said, like there was no fingerprint analysis, like I think only like one or two of the three like cryptic letters were even like figured out. Like it's just, there's so many things that just haven't been found, which is so wild.
And it's also insane that like the killer just disappeared. Like it wasn't something that went on for 40 years and nobody knew. It truly was like, oh, this person just up and vanished. And again, it could have been a possible suicide of the individual who had this happen, or who committed all of these horrific crimes. But it also could have just been like they kind of got that gratification out of it and then they were done and moved on with their life.
It's crazy. There's actually a theory that I read about that was saying, it was called the hoax theory, and it was that like the Zodiac wasn't actually one person. It was like multiple, and like police or officers or reporters just like connected them all because they were like the same, or like all these independent murders with letters together. Which I don't know if I really believe that, because like all the killings were in the same manner anyways. But I think that is just interesting to think like, oh, like what if this wasn't just one person, or like since we don't know, and like you said, the killings just stopped and he kind of fell off the face of the earth, it seems like. So it's hard to think that, but I thought that was interesting to be like, oh, like that's another way to think about it.
I apologize to everyone watching if you can hear the Marquette lacrosse team outside playing Bardai.
When it's warm out, they like to party out there.
When it's warm out, they like to play. Please tune in. Yep. Okay. So back to the pod.
Back to the hoax theory.
Back to the hoax theory. So, is the idea of it that? So I understand that the police thought it was like multiple separate people, or like a group of people. Because I know, and this would be a good one to talk about too, but like Charles Manson, I believe, kind of created this like cult of people to do his bidding. Yeah. So was it like that kind of?
I think it was like, it wasn't just one person, it was this group who like thought of themselves as the Zodiac, and then they were the ones who committed all these crimes, which I do think is interesting because, like, obviously, like I said before, it was like all of these killings were in the same manner. They were like usually younger people, like very secluded areas, like usually cars or that type of thing, and it was like all with a knife or a gun. So I do think it could be interesting to be like, oh, like it could be a group of people that all like are just doing the same thing, and maybe that's why it wasn't caught, because maybe one person did each one. Like, it's just so hard to, we just won't know.
I feel like that one I could possibly understand, but I also think it brings into question, like, okay, well, why would this group of people do this? Like,
Yeah.
if it was multiple people, then wouldn't there be, if someone saw something, wouldn't there be multiple drawings? Like,
Yeah.
how, like, did the handwriting look similar for each one, or did it look different? And I know, like, technically analysts couldn't figure out if they, like, who it was, but, like, was it the same handwriting in general?
Yeah.
So I just think that brings up more questions. Again, unfortunately, like you said, we're never going to get the answers to it, but I can see it if it was like, okay, everyone is different handwriting and it just makes sense.
Right. Right. I think it was. I
Do you
now I
just
can
hear them?
can't move.
Wait, hold on. Let me.
Yeah.
I had to move to the bathroom because they were so loud. So don't mind the change in
Yeah.
setting halfway through.
Yeah.
Anyways,
There's a little
do you
bit
hear
of
the?
music and yelling going on, so
Could you hear
we
it like
decided
clearly?
it was more so like when you were talking, but
Oh.
it definitely got worse as like before it was just like faint music, but then I could hear yelling, so
Okay, well, we're gonna stay in the bathroom now. Anyways,
perfect.
okay, well, another one, and I know Emily and I both did research on this, was the Arthur Lee Allen.
Yeah.
Um, so, Arthur Lee Allen, for those who don't know, and again, there are so many mixed opinions about this, is the most popular suspect, the one who people truly do or they don't believe. There's mixed opinions out there on whether or not he was involved. Mike Magyar, who I mentioned earlier, was one of the surviving victims. He identified Allen as the shooter in 1991 who tried to shoot him and shot his, I believe, his classmate, his friend. He was an American teacher and he was a convicted child molester later on, not while he was a teacher. And he was never directly linked to the crime. The FBI, well, the law enforcement did like handwriting analysis with him, did fingerprints, and nothing came up at the time. But he was considered the prime suspect due to owning a Zodiac watch as well as wearing the same brand of shoes that were found at, you know, the different crime scenes, and he was wearing the same brand. But again, never actually linked to the crime. But the one thing that I found out there was that there was a Netflix documentary on this. And there is the Seawater family, who I don't know who they are. I didn't dive a lot into it. But part of this documentary that was talking about the Zodiac Killer, and they claim that Allen confessed to being the killer at one point to them. Again, a lot of people have mixed opinions about it because they said, well, he was never linked to the crime. There was no direct, like, resemblance why he would be involved, besides the fact that, like, most of the victims were younger, so it makes sense that there's a little bit of that in there. But again, he's never been linked to it.
Yeah. I think it's so like how does one come up with the name Zodiac? Like I don't know, I think that is such a weird like coincidence, if a coincidence, that like he has that brand of watch and then he like names himself this like name. And I do think the shoes is such an interesting point.
Well, I also feel like having, even though he was convicted like later, in terms of like the child molester aspect,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, he does have that criminal history, but
And they
also
were
at
all
the
younger people.
they were all younger individuals. Granted, like they range from, I believe they range from they range from 16 to 29, so there's still that like a young adult in there, but there's some older adults in there as well. So it's kind of weird that he just does have that history, and yet there's a little bit of that connection in there.
Yeah, and another one that I saw was about Gary Francis Post, I believe it was. And this like group of like the case breakers, which I don't know exactly what they like technically are. They figured out like that this guy was probably a very strong suspect to be the Zodiac killer. He was a house painter, and he had this like scarring, I guess, that matched the same scarring as in the police sketch. And I guess his like name was deciphered from one of the letters.
Oh.
Again, he died in 2018, I believe it was. So again, we won't know, but I thought that that was interesting, like the scarring match and that his name was in the letters, which I guess Gary could be a popular name, but I think it's just a connection that who knows.
Yeah, it's a little suspicious for sure. I feel like it's sometimes like wrong, how do you say, like right or wrong timing, like a person just happens to be involved in something, because I feel like if you think about all the individuals on death row, right, some of them are victim or guilty of their crimes, while others are just people who happen to be involved and
Yeah.
not technically, were technically never supposed to be there, and they just got convicted anyway, so it's so hard to tell.
Wrong person, wrong time. Yeah.
So I feel like it's just, this case is crazy just because, again, there is nothing out there. There's no like for sure, or even just like there's maybes, but a lot of people online don't agree with either of these individuals being the actual killer, because again, there's no direct link, and they're like, well, this is just all hypotheticals or coincidences, so they must not be it. So I just find it interesting. I don't know, Em, do you in particular believe that either of them committed these things?
It's so hard to tell because also I feel like on a DNA like standpoint or front, whatever the wording is, like there was DNA, like a very little bit found on, I believe it was one of the stamps of the letter or one of the letters, and it like wasn't a full profile, so they couldn't connect it to anybody, but like it didn't, the part that they found didn't connect to like any of these men that we're talking about. So I just think it's like so, I don't know, it's just so weird, and I don't know who did it. I don't even know if I have a theory myself, but I don't I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, part of me just wonders if, like, there was a person out there who had this, like, obsession or this desire, right? Like, they talked about that gratification. They liked killing people because it was fun, which obviously there's probably something else psychological going on there. But if it was just kind of like a test run of, like, oh, let's see what happens if I do this. Will I get that gratification? And when they didn't, they just were like, okay, I'm done. Like, no one's figured out it's me, and move on with their life. Especially someone who's doing it in this manner obviously
Yeah.
lacks like that empathy and understanding. Like, you've killed, let's say, 5 people, and you've possibly killed 37 people.
Yeah.
Like, it just, I feel like it was, I'm so curious if it's something that someone just got into their head one day, and yeah.
I know. And it's like it was so unpredictable, like there wasn't a very clear like time frame that any of these murders occurred. It was just like there just seemed to be such a desire for like media attention, and just like, yeah, which I feel like is also just, I just don't understand why. Clearly they were doing this because, like you said, it was like killing is fun, but it's like you made this whole profile for yourself and now you're just like off not doing it anymore, which is so strange.
Yeah. And it just is, I don't know. Like, I feel like this one stumps me because it's like there are so many different outlets. And again, even the people, like the group of people being involved, I feel like there is a possibility that that's a thing where this like psychotic group of individuals decided, oh, we're gonna go do these and see what happens.
Yeah.
And who knows, like theoretically, like there could have been individuals who got caught for their murders who were involved in it, and they just never confessed, because obviously it would have gotten maybe more severe, could have been death penalty and all these things, and they just kind of were like, we're never gonna tell anybody about this.
Yeah, which, speaking of that, like one of the ciphers that they figured out, it was like, it took 20 something years. Again, we're not good at the math, but it took like 24 years, I guess, to like even just solve a part of it. And one of the messages, which I'll read it right here, it says, "I hope you have lots of fun trying to catch me." And like another one was like, "I'm not afraid of the gas chamber." So it's like,
Yeah.
it's just like all of these like pieces that it's like, it really, I wonder if this person was just having so much fun, like having all these people try to be finding them, which is also just like so scary. Like it having this enjoyment of not being able to be caught, which is
Yeah,
weird.
and it just is like it's very strange, and even to this day, there's four ciphers that were sent because there's also like letters and cipher. There's so much parts of this, and four of the ciphers, two remained unsolved, including 13 characters, so Z13, which a lot of people believe is his name, and 32 characters Z32. And again, so many people have tried to solve this, and it's just been unsolvable. And they have no idea. And I would be so curious if like, and this sounds crazy, but like putting it through like AI, could AI figure out what it is?
I know. I mean, I feel like over these however many years, like they must have just continued to test and test and test when all these new things have been coming out. But it is like, and like they solved some. So it's like, oh, there's like just these missing puzzle pieces that are just like so close to being like put together. But it's just like, these
Yeah.
people
Well,
must be so like going crazy.
yeah, and honestly, like it proves in these like deciphers too, right? Like it's okay, someone could theoretically do oh, well, this is a fake language, right? We're just going to
Yeah.
say that this is what it is when it doesn't actually mean anything. But two of them have been cracked, and the two you read of, like, I hope you have fun trying to find me. So obviously there's meaning behind these messages, and it's not just like Z13, obviously that means nothing to us, but
Right.
it's like
Of
I'm
course.
sure somewhere out there
Yeah.
is some weird cipher that you can create out of those letters and numbers.
Yeah. And I do wonder, like, since they've cracked two, like, is it similar, like, formatting or like a similar type of coded message that now they'll be able to solve others? Was each one like totally different? I don't know the answer on that. But yeah, it's also just weird that five or so like bodies have been found, but he claims to have killed 37. So
Yeah,
it's
like
like
that's
I
another
don't
one.
really know what that is. Like, oh, I guess if he was like rounding up to make himself feel better, like 10, but like 30, like where'd he get 37 from? Again, is this like a group of people that they're like counting all of, like,
Yeah,
it's just,
it's
it's so hard.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of moving into our frequently asked questions, we kind of look at
Yes.
those and see, like, what does the public like to know most about this?
Mm-hmm.
The first one was, is this case still open? Like Emily said, the case is still open. The FBI and then the San Francisco Police Department consider this case open. Some agencies out there has marked it as inactive and aren't investigating this anymore, actively investigating it, I should say. Um, but it seems like it is continuing to try to be solved, but at the same time, again, it's been however many years. Again, not good at math. We should write
When
down
we
these numbers.
research, yeah, exactly. When we research, we should also write down the math because that's
Yes,
not
it's
our
not working out for
specialty.
us.
No, no.
But either way, like theoretically, if you're really being honest about like the state of the world and also what people are willing to investigate, it
Yeah,
probably isn't as high on the podium, and it's more so now for like crime junkies like us or other
yeah,
investigators out there to kind of figure it out on their own.
yeah. And I also wonder if it's more so like on paper it's not active, but like, is there a group of people, like you said, that are, because I know one of them was deciphered by an international group, I guess, but like, is there just a group of people that like are working every day on trying to decipher this? Or so like on paper it doesn't look like it's active, but it is. Like, it's just hard to, it's hard to know, especially because like the killings just stopped and we like stopped hearing from him. It's not like he's been continuing to do this type of thing. So it's, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, and again, like who knows? Maybe someone in the next however many years will crack the code, but right now it is just kind of up in the air and the case is open, but probably just not being investigated as intensely as it once was.
for sure. Another question, like we talked about, was the Zodiac killer ever caught? No, we still don't know who this is. No one was ever arrested or apprehended, despite many leads and lots of hours of investigation. No one's been caught. And kind of along with that, another one was like, did the police sketch of the Zodiac killer help them solve anything? No. A witness on one of the scenes, like we said earlier, gave this image to the police and they drew a picture. It helped find some suspect leads, like we talked about, but it never really led to anything substantial. So, unfortunate.
Yeah. And then a big one, right, with a lot of these murders, if you think about it, or crimes outside of this, there's a lot of connecting factors that kind of explain like why someone went after these individuals, like we talked about 2 weeks ago with Jeffrey Dahmer, where it was like they were all minoritized individuals, young boys. Drop my name, Ramsey, there wasn't anything in particular, but in this case it's kind of up in the air of like what are the common themes. A big one was they were often killed in or near their vehicles, like we touched on earlier. A lot of it was kind of near like Lover's Lane in California, or individuals going out, like that sort of thing. So they were killed near, or like inside their vehicles. And a lot of times too, there's some evidence with some of the killings that the killer tried to get the victims out of the vehicle, so they would kill them in that way. So a lot of up in the air there. As previously mentioned, the ages ranged from 16 to 29, so we could do older adolescent and young adults, so trying to kind of figure out that. Again, those are a huge age range. There's no super common theme in terms of like women were usually killed. It was usually couples or just two friends, whatever it may look like, but those were the main ones. And I think one thing to really mention, kind of going back to Arthur Lee Allen, there was never sexual assault that occurred to the victims or the possible victims in regard to the Zodiac killing. It was always just like normal murder, would just shoot them or however in the moment they were doing. One kind of final thing to mention in terms of like going back to Arthur Lee Allen and his connection that was really interesting was none of these victims were sexually assaulted. It was only killed and that was it. And again, we touched on how the Zodiac killer alluded to just wanting to kill. There wasn't any motive behind it in terms of like sexual gratification. And with Arthur Lee Allen, he was a convicted child molester. So if you're really thinking about, well, how is he involved in this? Wouldn't it make sense where if he was the Zodiac killer, he would be sexually abusing these victims before they were murdered or whatever the case may be? And that's kind of my thoughts on that as well.
I also find that so disturbing of him because he was a teacher. And a child molester, and that is just horrifying.
Yeah, it's insane and it's disgusting. And again, like, it just, a lot of this makes no sense. And I think it makes me more upset because I'm just like, I truly have no idea. And even when I start to lean in one direction, I'm like, well, no. So then I lean in the other direction.
Yeah. And like a lot with serial killers is that there is a motive behind it and there is like a pattern that they do every single time, which like in this case, that's not like, they're not all the same range of age, like they're not all the same like ethnicity or race or like I said, age. So it's just like, like there's so many pieces that just don't make sense. And I agree with you, like it just frustrates me because it's not even like, oh, like it took them 20 years to find someone, like they still haven't found anybody. It's just so and even I have such a hard time with these types of cases.
And it's like, I believe we both talk about this, right, in order to like learn about it and to kind of just sit and talk about our theories, but also like it is sad that these families just never got justice, or even the people who were involved that are still alive, they never got the justice they deserved. And who, God forbid, who knows if they're still thinking like, is this person still out there? Like, we don't know.
Or like the 30 others that he claims to have
100%
done something to.
And who knows, like whether or not that, like you said earlier, maybe he said that to just say, "Oh, I boosted my numbers because
Yeah.
blah blah blah." But it's
Hmm.
like in reality, he could have killed almost 30 other people, and
Yeah.
we just have no idea, or we just said, "Oh, this person died because of this," and they're never figuring it out. And it's heartbreaking,
Hmm.
but it also is just very fascinating because there is so much to this, and again,
And
it
there's
could be.
still letters to decipher. Like, what if there's
Hmm.
information in there, which is
Oh my gosh.
also just absolutely crazy.
We should have just spent our podcast trying to decipher that letter,
Oh my gosh.
honestly.
We're just like,
We're just writing
oh,
it instead.
I know, I
But,
really do want to see like the two that were figured out and the other two. Like, I just want to see them next to each other. Like,
or even like the process of like, well, how did they figure this out? And
totally.
can they work that into this? Or is it like two different languages of that? Like crypto?
Yeah, different
I don't
types
know what
of,
the word is.
I don't know what the word is either, but just like, are they all like, yeah, are they the same? Are they like different formats? Like, I would assume if they were all the same, they would have been able to figure them all out if they figured one or two out.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
I just, and like, how did this Zodiac killer come up with all of this stuff? Like, ugh. And that,
Yeah,
what's his name's name was like found in some of the deciphering. Was
yeah,
it Gary something? I forget who it
yeah.
was.
It was Gary,
Gary,
but
yeah.
it was Gary
Gary.
something. It was some guy named Gary. But truly, like,
Yeah.
why is his name in there? Is that just a coincidence? Yeah, this is just such an interesting one to investigate and just kind
Hmm.
of look more into. And wanted to give a shout out to Kippa98, and I hope I'm saying that right. For kind of introducing us to this one a little bit. I've heard about it, but I've never really dove into it. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
heard about it before.
No, not, I mean, I've heard about it, but I've never taken a deep dive, so we appreciate all the suggestions and like
Mm-hmm.
some that maybe we wouldn't even have thought of right now. So we definitely
Yeah.
appreciate it.
100%. And again, for next week, if you have any suggestions on what we could tune into next and kind of
Hmm.
look into a little bit more, feel free to reach out and leave comments below in the comments or on
Hmm.
TikTok or Spotify, wherever you're listening into us.
Yes.
And just appreciate everyone who's tuned in thus far.
Yes, we do. We love our fans.
We will see you next week with a brand new episode.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye.